Hello, and welcome to the Confidence Academy podcast. My name is Lily Badcock, and I am a transformational confidence coach helping amazing people to thrive in spite of their anxiety. Each week, I will be sharing a brand new episode, giving you inspiration and motivation, as well as tangible steps you can take to manage your anxiety better. There will also be interviews with guest experts from around the world who have not only overcome their own anxiety, but who now help others to do the same. I believe that having anxiety doesn't mean you can't live an epic life. If you would like more support with this, please head on over to lilybadcock.com and check out the free resources I've created for you. But for now, let's get you on your way to living your epic life anxiety-free. And remember, confidence is yours as soon as you choose it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Confidence Academy podcast, and today I am sat here in real life with one of my very best friends in all the land, Alison Barclay. Alison, welcome to my podcast.
Well, hello, thank you. It's great to be here.
How weird does this feel? Because Alison and I have just been hanging out all day eating cheese and bread. We didn't eat cheese all day, to be fair, but there was some cheese, wasn't there?
Cheese involved.
There's definitely been cheese and bread and smoothies. This inspirational music is going to fade out in a minute.
Okay.
Don't have to talk all the way over it. I freaking love it. I've said it before. If you're having... Oh, it got louder. If you just had to have one last burst of sound before it left us. Yeah, if you're having a bad day or feeling a bit rubbish, download some inspirational music. Even that, I got that from Audio Jungle. And I don't know, I just feel like you should play it in headphones and walk around. You'll feel epic. So anyway, welcome to my podcast, Alison. This all feels very formal, but Alison is one of my very best friends, as I've said. I've known her years and years and years. And the reason I wanted to invite her onto the podcast is because the whole point of this podcast is to show people that they can thrive in spite of anxiety or indeed any kind of challenge that they may be up against or may feel like they need to overcome. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of who Alison is as a person, and then I'm going to hand over to her and she's going to tell her story. And I do have a few set questions for her as well. I tell you what, whatever you're doing, just stop it, turn off all your notifications and all of your distractions and just sit down and soak up this goodness. Maybe get a little notebook if you want to take notes. You have been warned, but there's some epic goodness coming your way. So just to give you a little bit of background, Alison right now is working for the company Neil Remedies. Is that the full title?
Yeah, I'm a consultant.
Yeah, so Alison's a consultant, and it's a multi-level marketing business, which a lot of you will have heard of. It's all based around network marketing. And the reason that's relevant is because that's kind of a big part of your story from years ago. Yeah. This is something that you did before. But the reason that Alison's on this podcast is because she has had to face and overcome probably more adversity and challenges than I would say the regular person has to go through. So just as a rundown, and I'm not going to go into details, but just as a rundown, these are some of the things that Alison has dealt with in her life. So she lost her dad age 13. She fell into using prescription drugs and actually attempted suicide because of that as well. She lost her stepdaughter years later with the guy that she was with, who, by the way, was thoroughly abusive. So, horrible abusive relationship, but then lost her stepdaughter to a really sad accident. And as a result of that relationship breaking down, lost her house, her business, and we wrote everything, but I'm going to say almost everything, because it wasn't everything, because I knew you then and I'm still here. And Alison also has beautiful daughters who are also my friends, and we still have them too. So not everything, but certainly a hell of a lot. And I've always said, whenever I talk about Alison, which is quite a lot and always in a good way, but I always say, and I don't ever go into detail, but I always say that she's one of the strongest people I know, because she's been through more than I could even fathom, and more than when you look around at other people and what they have to deal with, it's more than most people would have to face. and yet she is the brightest ball of glowing energy you could ever hope to meet. She never fails to make me smile at no point, and I knew you through some of these experiences as well, and I have never felt like I couldn't call her. I never felt like I wasn't welcome in her house. I never even heard her complain. You know, I've definitely seen you throw a couple of hissy fits. But, you know, one was definitely just because your dress at the wedding we were at in France had fallen off the hanger. I mean, that was some epic meltdown.
That's enough to make anybody lose it.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm not saying this woman's a saint by any stretch of the imagination. And by the way, never take her to America and let her get hungry. I'm just going to leave that there as well. Like, that is not where you want to be.
Or make me come out of the pool while it's raining.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Oh no, I have to tell that story. We went to Florida years ago and Alison was in the wave pool, and they had to close the wave pool because in Florida they have these epic storms in the afternoon, and Alison didn't want to get out of the pool, and so I think 10-year-old Alison came out to play and she threw the biggest strop ever, and we were like, but they're closing the park, and I think we were flying home like within the hours of that time as well. I'm not done, I haven't finished, I was still having fun. So yeah, no, for sure she loses her shit, but around these massive life kind of experiences, I never once heard a complaint. I never once felt like I couldn't call on her. I never once felt like I couldn't go round, and I did go round a lot. Alison is one of the best cooks in the world. Fact. I challenge anyone to find me a better one. So, you know, from that rundown, you can see that, you know, you've definitely been through some stuff. And Alison, because she's Alison, doesn't even see that that's even much of a big deal at times. You know, like even when I said to her, well, you should come on the podcast and talk about it, she's like, but there's not really anything to talk about. Like, it's just my life. Do you know what I mean? It's so like, to you, it's just so like, you know, and I know this isn't the case, but it's almost like, well, it happened, I dealt with it, and now I'm here, and like, it is what it is, you know. You don't see yourself as being anything that's remarkable or amazing, but I do, so I'm letting you know that now. My intention is not to try and make her cry in this podcast, but, you know, secretly maybe that is what I'm trying to do a little bit. So I wanted to give you that rundown so that you know who we are hearing from. And, you know, I think it's so easy. I've said this on previous podcast interviews where we can get into a bit of comparison around what we're going through and what others go through. And that isn't what this is about. But this is really just to say that no matter what you're going through, you can have an amazing life off the back of it, whatever that means to you. And, you know, I'm sure some of those things I just mentioned, there are going to be people listening who can relate to that. You know, maybe people have lost their parents at a young age. Maybe people have had suicide attempts. Maybe people have had, you know, certainly abusive relationships, or where they feel like they lost everything and had to start again. And maybe you're listening now and that is your current reality. And that's really what this episode is all about, because I want you to see that even after all of that, you know, she's sat here grinning, scoffing cheese on my sofa, and all is right with the world. So, Alison, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So just, you just talk at us. You know, these podcasts are never planned. They're never prepared. What comes out will come out, and I do 100% believe that. So tell the good people listening all about you.
Well, I mean, I suppose really the thing is that I'm just sort of like every man. You know, I'm just an ordinary person, which when you put down some of the things that maybe I've gone through, yeah, I suppose some of it is extraordinary. I very much live by, I think it was Churchill that said, if you're going through hell, keep going. And I suppose, you know, that's one of my mantras. And the other one is that, you know, nothing can last. So whether it's good, whether it's bad, whatever it is, it has to pass. So I think, you know, I sort of very much try and grab and soak up and take in and make the most of the good things that are happening. And pretty much like when I'm on a roller coaster, when bad things are happening, roller coasters are bad. I close my eyes, I grit my teeth, I clench my fists, and I wait for it to pass. And
there's photographic evidence of this as well.
Yeah, that is
it's
exactly
another Florida story.
That's another thing. There you go. I'm not sure I had to test it 4 times though, but anyway, I did. But that, I guess, that actually as well does, in a sense, sum me up. Is you know, I guess I'm not easily scared off from things. So you know, even after sort of a bad relationship, although I was on my own for a long time, which I think was a good thing, it didn't scare me off relationships. I didn't think that all men were bad. I knew that that wasn't true. I just had to make sure I didn't attract a horrible person again, and I had to give myself time and space to heal from having been around that, which I think I did. Which all sounds really nice, but it was pretty gritty when you're actually going through that. You know, when you've lost your home and suddenly, you know, you're a grown woman living in the bedroom of somebody else's house, and you're suddenly studenty. So for a long while, I think I kind of lost my identity, because prior to that I had been the person that other people came to. They would come to my home and I would look after them, and I would cook for them, and I could run them a bath, and I could, you know, make a bed up for them, and I could look after them. And then all of a sudden I was the person that needed to be looked after, and that was really weird. And I think sort of during that time as well, obviously anxiety is high around a lot of all of that, but being in somebody else's house and being, you know, making sure I didn't burn it down or do certain things, that got me really sort of rattled around, constantly checking things, making sure I had turned the gas off, making sure I had shut the front door, making sure I wasn't doing anything. And I think also during that time, I realised I'd kind of always made myself outside of my own home sort of fairly small, tried to like not be insignificant, and I don't mean this in like, oh, everyone feels sorry for me kind of way, but just in a sort of like, I made myself important in my own home. That was where I could be. So I suddenly had to find a way of like, who was I outside of the house, outside of, you know, who was I actually in this skin. So that has been an interesting, painful, you know, in places painful, in places amazing kind of journey. And I think that kind of acceptance of, you know, I would have, prior to losing my home, always sort of said, well, I'm a really open, you know, really whatever kind of person. But actually it turned out I defined myself through my home. I said, you know, come in and this is who I am, and, you know, these are my sofas, this is, you know, it's just but it was instructive. I mean, it's, if anyone had said, how do you want to learn about yourself, I wouldn't have chosen losing my home, not having somewhere for my daughters to come back to, and in a sense losing my sense of self. I would never have chosen that way of learning, but actually wouldn't change it now, because I can see if I was still in that home and still in that situation, I would actually be stuck. So weirdly, and I hate this, but you know, the bad stuff was instructive, and so I now embrace it. Now it's over. Yeah, but no, I kind of say that in a silly kind of voice, but in truth, the bad stuff, I actually do remember crying, and I think it was to you, Lil, and going, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to learn from this, but I will learn. And yeah. I mean, there's always been that sense in me that, you know, there was something to learn, there was something that I would get from this, and that it would be better in the end. And I think the I think the thing is that even when, you know, and we were talking about this earlier, I still do every now and then kind of wake up in a state of panic. So I've reframed things. When I feel anxious, I've decided I'm excited. So I've changed the anxious feeling, and instead of playing on that, thinking that I'm being empathic and picking up something terrible that's going on in the world, I've just completely dumped that idea, and I now go, oh, what am I excited about? I try and start each day sort of with a kind of meditation. I don't get out of bed and do it. I like my bed, but I stay
bed.
I stay tucked in that bed, and I imagine myself to be a magnet, and I imagine myself to draw to me the things that I need for that day. I give thanks for what I'm going to have that day. So all of the things that I've kind of like read, and over the years, you know, and The Secret and everything that I've kind of read feeds into saying, you know, this is what I want, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to achieve.
Yeah, and you just said something that reminded me, actually, because The Secret was something you introduced. I have to say, actually, everything that's ever come out of my mouth has probably come out of Alison's mouth first. And I'd love to say she doesn't like to say I told you so, but she does. Quite frequently she'll be like, I told you you'd find that role, like, you know. And like, The Secret was one of those things, because she was like, oh, I remember it was me and another friend of ours, and she was like, you've got to see this film. And we were like, what is... I used to call you a massive hippie, didn't I? Do you remember? I used to tease you for being a hippie. The reason being that, you know, literally, I mean, I didn't know you when the earlier part of your story was playing out, but I did know you when you were in that relationship, and I did know you all through the loss of your house. And it wasn't just that you lost the house, because some people lose their houses because of falling behind with payments, or, you know, or for different reasons. It was all of the deception you had to deal with that became uncovered as part of that process. So it was a very multi-layered trauma, I think. It wasn't just that you lost your house. It wasn't just that you lost, you know, that your marriage broke down, or that your job, you know, you lost all of that as well. It was multi-layered, and it kept firing back, you know. But what I also remember was, as much as I never heard you complain, all I ever heard you say was, this is going to be all right one day. I'm going to have a house again one day. I'm going to, you know, you were constantly affirming. And it wasn't that I never listened to that and thought, oh, she's delusional. I 100% believed you. And I was actually excited for you as well. And I think that energy speaks for itself. Yeah. And, you know, you are in a house now. You're in your property now. And I know that, you know, as we all do, you'll have aspirations certainly to probably, you know, go on and get something else after that. But I remember when you had that bedroom in that place. It wasn't even a house, was it? It was a bungalow. And, you know, it was, but I never felt like, you never stopped being that person that was proud of your surroundings. I still came for dinner. I still remember that. We had the amazing beef and red wine sauce, which everybody needs. I feel like you should share your recipes, actually. This should just, you know, aside from everything else, the woman's a phenomenal cook. So I feel like I keep begging her to make a cookbook. So I think, you know, if you're listening to the podcast and you want to hear about Alison's recipes, then get on it. Let me know. Get in the Confidence Academy podcast Facebook group, or email me on my website, www.lilybadcock.com, and tell me I want Alison's cookbook, and then she'll have to do it.
Okay.
30,000 people have power to speak. So yeah, I think it's, you know, that's a really important distinction to make, because I know that you wouldn't have always felt like doing, you know, affirmations, meditation, or any of these self-care things that we all hear we should be doing. How much of it do you think you did on any level when it was like the darkest time? Do you still think that, did you still have times where you kind of self-counseled yourself and was like, it's going to be better, or this will change, this too shall pass, anything like that? Or did you ever feel like you were just completely stuck and there was no way you were ever going to get through the bit that you were dealing with at the time?
Certainly I had times like that, yeah. I think for the most part, whenever you're going through stuff like that, there's almost too much to think about. So you literally have to just go day by day, because you can't do anything else. So, you know, you do all the things that you're supposed to do, and try and eat well, and take your nutrition, and kind of do that. And those things are really important. I don't actually mean to skim over that, because I do really think that that's important. And I know that there was one Christmas, or the first Christmas, when I didn't do some of those things, and I really was feeling very bloody, very suicidal, and you know, people were very concerned, which is you know, I feel terrible that, you know, I kind of put them through that. But then I suddenly, I don't know, I kind of woke up and realised I hadn't been looking after myself in that physical way, and having to eat properly and do those proper things. So there is that sort of brain chemistry thing as well. But I think there are times when you just get overwhelmed, when you think, and I think this is the toughest thing. You think, oh right, something has gone right. So I was able to get out of being in somebody else's house, and I got my own place. So for whatever reason, I thought everything was on the up and up then, and then something went wrong, and it's like I was sort of tumbled back months and months and months, and everything just, I just felt completely overwhelmed, like, oh, it's never going to be right. And I think it's really difficult if you get into that mindset. But I think the only thing that you can do, and I'm was lucky to have friends around me as well, is actually to talk to someone. Actually, so having friends around me, if you can't get hold of, I did tell someone at a cash till once. She asked how I was, big mistake really. and she looked
she
looked a little bit blown away when I'd finished. But to be fair, I felt better, and she was in work, so she was all right. But it's that kind of thing, and I think sometimes we underestimate the power of of talking things out, of saying out loud some of those things. So there are agencies and there are people and there are other things, and I think use them. I did actually ring the Samaritans, and actually really terribly, it's terrible, but the line kind of went dead, and I realised I was talking to no one, and that was a weird feeling. I was like, I must have been really boring.
Oh no!
I don't think they hung up. I mean, to be fair to the Samaritans, they're very good people, but I don't think they hung up. But it was kind of like they had, like, oh, you've gone on too long now. But the thing was as well was that I kind of got bored with listening to myself. And I suddenly thought, no, I need something different to talk about. So, I did a lot of reading, and, got my hands on every kind of book I could. And obviously now, there are these kind of podcasts and there are things for people to look into. And I think that these are really important because, that whole thing of you will get through it. This too will pass. This too will pass. So, yeah, that is my mantra.
Yeah, and I want to just touch now on some of the ways in which you have dealt with the situations, maybe not at the time, but certainly since. And one of those ways was you took a course in stand-up comedy. You went, was it just a workshop to start with, like a little? Because it seemed to start off like, oh, I'll just give this a go, and then it like escalated.
Well, I mean, one of my lines when I was doing stand-up was that in therapy, when you're talking to people, you're only talking to one person, whereas with stand-up, you're talking to a room full of people. So you get to tell more people what a horrible time you've had. But I mean, in truth, I use humour all the time, and I've always used humour. And I think one of the things, and I think it was said on the in The Secret, was the lady who was facing a health challenge, was that they just watched funny films and and laughed all the time. And I think that there has to be that balance when stuff is, when you have got a lot of stuff going on and it is rubbish. You might not feel like watching a funny film, and actually sort of initially you might sit there with that whole sort of like comedy audience thing, go on, make me laugh. But if you can find you're funny, if you can find some humour, and I'm just trying to think of an example, but just off the top of my head, I think you have to find, in every situation there is I can think of one actually. It was after my stepdaughter had been killed, and it was horrible, and in a sense there's nothing to find funny in that at all, but we nobody could be bothered to cook, but we thought we'd better eat, so some Chinese food was ordered, and we were sitting eating this Chinese food, and then one of my daughter's boyfriend's friend had texted him and said, if there is anything that I can do, let me know. Anyway, this friend was the son of, his parents owned a really good Chinese restaurant. And Danny read the message out and he went, well, it's a bit late, we've already ordered. And we were just crying and laughing at the same time. And, the thing is that there is always something, to kind of break that spell. And we laughed for a long time, through tears, but, it was just that sort of like one comment. And I think, with any situation, I think I'm always trying to look for the bright side. I mean, you've got the darkness there, and I'm not ignoring it in one sense. I know it's there, but I think the minute you can shine any kind of light on it, it lessens.
That's the thing. I think it's not about getting rid of the darkness. I actually love that as a metaphor. The darkness is always there. It's just sometimes it's so light you can't see it. And that's the whole point. It's not about trying to get rid of it or trying to push it down. And I know there are some people there are other people who deal with it in a similar way, where they'll find something they love or something that makes them laugh, and then others can judge them for that because they'll say, oh, you're not processing your feelings, you're not dealing with that. And I think, well, even if they're not, that's okay, because they are processing, because it comes in every second. You just have to do what it takes. And I know it's happened to me. I've had other friends it's happened to as well, where it's really easy to look from the outside in and go, oh well, I wouldn't do that, or what you should do is, there's so much pressure, isn't there, to we feel like we have to get back to being okay. And it's rarely for us either. It's usually for everyone around us. They desperately want you to be okay so they can feel okay.
Actually, that's an interesting point. But just before I say that, in doing the comedy, it's interesting you're saying about like living with anxiety. Before you go on stage, I not just speaking for myself, because I know with the other people I was around, and it's pretty terrifying. You're terrified about stepping out onto that stage, but you kind of do it anyway. The thing is, though, it was always kind of said to us that when you lose that, you kind of lose your ability to care. And I think it might be the same with anxiety. Without that anxiety in place, you might lose something, you might miss something. I think anxiety can give you a different perspective on life and an empathy that you might miss were it not there. And I think it can sometimes soften people. So I don't think it's always all bad.
No.
And now I can't remember the other bit that I was going to tell you.
It was about, I said how it's the process you have to go through, and that other people might have an idea and say, oh, that wouldn't be what I would do, and I shouldn't do that, or I wouldn't do that. And we are always trying to get back to being okay so that everyone else around us...
That's the bit.
feels okay
I was
as well.
very aware as well, certainly when I lost the house. I was very, very aware that the people sort of around me were pained by it and affected by it. And I actually realised that, this is easier to go through than to watch someone go through. And that was a weird sensation. I wouldn't want to see anyone going through that. And I mean, unless you're sort of in a position to go, right, look, love, there's $250,000, go buy yourself another house.
Do you know what? I did actually check.
I know.
I did actually look. I looked at my bank and was like, can I help? And it was like, oh shit, I can't. I really can't.
But that's the thing.
Not in that way anyway.
No, you did help me loads. But it's just, it's not all about money. But that's the thing. It was actually, I realised it was easier for me to go through this and deal with this than to watch someone, and not just someone I care about, watch anybody else go through this. I think it is, on the outside, watching someone go through something like that is incredibly painful and very frustrating. And so, I mean, there's, I think it's difficult for families sometimes to be supportive because of that. It's sometimes difficult for certain friends if they're not of that type, if they're not really sort of open with their own feelings. You know, and that's why people withdraw. It's not because they don't care, it's because they don't know how to help you, or they don't know the words to say to support you. I mean, you know, what do you say to somebody in that situation? And I mean, I've literally just been in that situation where, you know, someone has died, and you know, I want to call them, to reach out to them, and I know they're going to cry, and they actually apologise for crying, and I was like, I think you really know that you do not have to apologise to me, you know, because, you know, this person knows me quite well, and was around when my older brother died a few years ago, and you know, I was just like, you don't need to be apologising, and I knew that I was going to make you cry by ringing, but I just wanted you. I needed for you to know that I was thinking of you. I needed for you to feel that I am there. So, you know, and so sometimes people could be frightened because they're going to make someone cry, but we're going to cry anyway. So, you know.
And better to cry in company, for sure.
Well, I prefer to be in private. It's not a good look on me at all. I'm a bit of an ugly crier, yeah.
I think that one thing you said then that I really wanted to pick up on was how people are uncomfortable about watching somebody else struggle. And I think that's because we're all mirrors. Everyone that you have in your life mirrors back a part of you. And I think it can be really painful because when you see somebody going through grief for any reason, whether it's somebody who's died or a relationship that's broken down, or, you know, any terrible experience where grief is being brought forward, we naturally look and think, oh, how would I handle that? How would I be if that happened to me? And, you know, it sounds like a really selfish point of view, but that is how our minds work. And we look at that and it's like, oh Lord, like, in fact, I remember someone that, you know, because I think I was there when they said it, shortly after you lost your stepdaughter, and they literally just were like, how are you coping? Like, this is so terrible. And that was it. Yeah. You know, they had nothing else for you. Yeah. But that made you laugh. I remember it. You laughed out loud and you were like, yeah, thanks. That's awesome. You know, isn't it? And it's funny that, you know, and again, like, at no point is the situation funny, but you know, you said earlier, oh, it's funny what can make us laugh. And it often isn't the obvious things. You know, you'd put on a so-say funny film. It might not be any of the funny punchlines that make you laugh, but it's actually, I think, when we're faced with something we're already thinking, and then we just laugh because we're like, oh, look, someone else thought it too. Like, you know, and you almost see like the humanity in it, and it's like, oh, it's okay. It's okay that I feel like that. And I think laughter's a very energetic release as well. It's, you know, the reason...
laughter and tears are very close together.
Yeah, I was going to say, you hear people all the time say that they laugh at funerals, and obviously they don't think it's funny to be at a funeral, but you're on that knife edge of emotion, and it could literally fall either way. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's super relevant. Now, I did map out some questions to keep us on track, so I will try very hard to do that. So I feel like, you know, to tell Alison's story in its entirety would not be possible on a podcast, and I'm someone who believes everything's possible, but I think to really do it justice and to really get to the root of every little thing, we would never be able to do that in a podcast. But hopefully we've highlighted some of the main things that you've dealt with, and, you know, people have been able to hear how you navigated it. The main message I wanted to get across was, you're still sat here, and, you know, and she even washed and brushed her hair. You know, she looks good, people. So, you know, it's not, you know, as much, it can be like a sucking vortex when you feel like you're there, because you, at times, you do wonder how you'll ever get out, and you wonder how you'll ever put another foot in front of the other, or how you'll get through the next minute, hour, day, whatever it may be. So the main thing I wanted to get across with this was that, in spite of all of that, you are here, and I feel like you aren't just here clinging on by your fingernails either. Like, I see your life as being one that's very blessed, and I know you would say the same thing.
I would, yes.
And, you know, you are truly happy. This isn't just about, oh, God, I survived it and I'm just about clinging on. And I know at a time it probably felt that way. But I, you know, I really want to get home to people that you've come through some of the worst. I mean, that list I read out at the beginning, even to go through one of those things would be hugely traumatic. So to have been through all of that, it's almost like being in the sea and the wave knocks you down, and then you kind of get yourself up and then another wave knocks you down. But you said this earlier in another way, but basically it comes back down to choice, which always comes out on these podcasts. At some point, you either don't get back up and you let the sea carry you away, or you get back up and then you take a step out of the sea, which is an advisable course of action to take if you keep being smacked down by a wave. But it's not always that easy. That's actually happened to me. I was on the beach in Spain years and years ago now, and I love jumping waves when they're like surf waves. So that's what we were doing, me and my friend. And then one was so massive, it wiped me out, and I got back up. And then the minute I got back up, I got pulled back down again. And I did feel a little bit helpless for a second. And in a split second, I was like, I might not get out of this. Like, I've tried to get back up a lot of times and I'm tired now. And I think this is the thing, isn't it? The more stuff that you get hit with, the more tired you get, and the more you start to think, can I get back up? And then I luckily had the sight to go, I know what, I'll stand up and I'll take a step because I was just standing up and then waiting for the next thing to hit me. So I think, you know, that as a metaphor is really powerful, because that, to me, that's what life is like. And whether your list of experiences reads like Alison's, or whether you feel like me, I feel very blessed in my life. I don't have a list like that. And for a long time, and I still have GAD, so for a long time, I was of this mindset of, I have no right to feel this way, because I know people that have actual reason to be anxious or to be fearful or depressed, or, you know, whatever it may be. But, you know, I've also learnt since that it really isn't about that, and everybody's on their own path, they're on their own journey. But you can make that choice to stand up strong. I've just had another Florida flashback. Alison was in the wave pool, the one I mentioned. So before they made her get out, before the storm hit, we were in a wave pool. Now the wave pools they're not as severe as the sea, because you know you can get out. And
it depends where you're standing. It was pretty strong.
Alison was this is just a testament of the sort of person you are. She's quite diddy, Alison. She's quite little, ickle, and she placed herself slap bang in the middle of this pool, probably way deeper than she should have gone for her height and build, and waited for this monstrous wave. And as it came towards her, she stuck her fist in the air and yelled strong and true, and then the wave hit and she was nowhere to be seen. And like, I was like, where's Alison? She was not where she had been. And then I looked around and she'd been washed some like far distance up the pool, like scaring children. Like, I'm gonna say the bikini wasn't all in place, certainly, and the hair was all over the place. But you know, that is how I see you in your life. It's just like, hit me with what you like, I'm coming back. And you know, I might have lost my bikini in the process, but I'm coming back, and you can do that again, and I know I'll be okay. And you know, I think a lot of my my positive attitude and my strong mindset was planted by you. Even when I wasn't interested in hearing about it, I remember you telling me about Tony Robbins, and I'm like, Tony what now? By the time I watched The Secret, I was kind of into it by then. I remember being quite excited about that film. But you know, all of the mindset stuff that I talk about now, it's rooted in what you taught me. And I always find it funny because quite often, you know, obviously we're friends, so I hear from Alison a lot, and she's, bless her, she'll always text or email or message or phone and go, oh my God, like what you just said was brilliant. Like, oh, that was so good. I really needed to hear that. And I always say back, that's yours. You told me that. Like, this isn't new information, you know, and I think that's also something that's really lovely about life. And, you know, these are the people you want to have in your life. It's not about being perfect. And remember this for yourself as well, that, you know, your dearest friends don't need you to be all put together and perfect all the time. we just need to reflect back what we need in our souls. And I know that I've been able to be there for Alison when she's needed me, and exactly back the other way. And it's funny because Alison is always someone who we have a bit of it's like an unspoken connection, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
quite often I will ring Alison just because I'll feel like I want to ring her, and usually she'll be like, oh, I really needed you to call, or you know, it's a terrible day, like, let me tell you all about it, like the poor lady at the cash point. But the same thing to me as well, and not always when it's doom and gloom, but you know, like I was having an epic day of synchronicity recently, and slap bang in the middle of it, Alison rang, and I just laughed and was like, of course Alison's ringing, because she always knows when to call. So I would really urge you to, you know, lean on the people that you have in your life, and look at the people that you're surrounded by, and also look at how they see you through their eyes. Because, you know, it's interesting hearing Alison talk about her story and how she felt like when you were in that bedroom, how you felt you'd lost your identity, and how you felt that because you didn't have your space anymore. And yet I never perceived that, because to me, you still had that space, albeit smaller, but I still came for meals, we still hung out, we still did all of the things. Nothing that mattered actually changed. It was all the kind of stuff that we see around us, that, you know, the things that we think matter, like the bricks and mortar of a house. And you know, it isn't that. It's the heart and soul that matters. And, you know, no circumstance can really kill that. It can definitely dim it for a while, but it can't take it away. So I think, you know, it's such a powerful story. And so I just wanted to ask, for anyone who's listening who resonates with any part of your story, so whether that's to do with the, you know, the relationship breakdown, or the prescription drugs, or like any part of the story that we covered, what do you want to tell them, especially if they're dealing with that right now? Like, imagine Alison back in whatever year it was, when you would have desperately been searching for something to help. What would you have needed to hear in that moment?
That it is going to be okay. I think that you have to have that hope. Hold on to that hope. Whatever it is that you are wanting to happen, really truly just focus on that. The other stuff is going to come up, but try and scribe it from your mind and then get back to what you want. And sometimes it is a fight. I mean, I can remember just as a small child trying to even just visualize myself running. I couldn't run even in my imagination, and but I kept going, and I forced myself to run in my imagination. And I think that, you know, the good stuff is sometimes harder to make happen. I don't know why. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's just how we're programmed. I have no idea. But you can overwrite that program. And I think you do it with what you read, you do it with the words that you use, and you do it with your imagination. And I think that you have all of those tools, and you just have to use them to make the life that you want.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I think it's so important to get that across as well, because I know that when you're in the middle of it, it's not always easy to hear that, because it's very easy to go, oh, it's okay for you, but this is me.
Yeah.
And I, you know, you have to honour that too.
I do remember sort of like saying, oh yeah, blah blah blah, lovely, let's all be happy and hold hands.
Yeah, well, because
that kind of attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the relationship Alison and I have got. We're it's very confronting at times, because, you know, a good example actually is even earlier today, when my laptop decided it wasn't going to load, and I had another podcast interview lined up. So I'm getting a bit shitty with my computer because it won't go. And Alison, like Yoda, sat in the corner going, you need to send it love. You need to, like, you know, get rid of that negative, look away from the screen and send it love. And I literally was like, I know she's right, but I don't want to. I just want to rage at my computer right now.
Yeah.
And you know, so we're really good at we always come and tell the other one what we know we need to hear.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it was. There was something not even that long ago where this hardly ever happens. It's the only time it's happened, where we met for coffee, And I was in a terrible place that day, really depressed. And if it had been anyone else, I'd have cancelled the coffee meeting.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, it's Alison, and we always show up when we need it, and so she's going to help me. And I walked in, and you were having exactly the same kind of day. And we literally both just sat there like, today is shit. And like we were trying, like no one had any kind of positive...
I've got nothing to give.
There was nothing to give. But, you know, I think the shared rage definitely helped.
I think we probably ended up laughing.
We did end up laughing.
Yeah.
We ended up chatting to some old guy in the corner who was earwigging about Neil Jard, and he wanted to know
It
about
was coffee time,
oils.
wasn't
Yeah, it was. It was really funny.
Yeah. Excellent.
So we haven't even gone into half of what Alison does now. I mean, she really is thriving. She's back doing her business, which is what she's good at. Alison's a real people person. She's always been good at building relationships and making people feel awesome. And she now does that through her business with Neil Jard. And we didn't even get into the power of aromatherapy and the oils and all the rest of it. So you'll probably have to come back on and we'll do a whole separate thing about that. It's just to know that, you know, it is possible to come through no matter how tough your situation is, no matter how hopeless it seems. Just know that it is possible if you choose it. And obviously you always get to stand in your power and you always get to make those decisions. But I hope that listening to podcasts like this will help you get to a decision like that. And I know that I speak from my own experience. Your friends and your family are going to truly be so grateful when you're able to come through that. And again, it's not about perfection. It's just about getting through another minute, another second even. So I just want to finish on, there was a couple of questions that we didn't cover, but we kind of did through the conversation we had anyway. But if you had a megaphone and the ability to reach every anxiety sufferer in the world right now, what would your inspiring message to them be?
Keep going. Keep doing the good stuff for yourself, and keep putting one foot in front of the other, because what you're aiming to be or where you're aiming to be, you will get there.
And that's all that's ever expected of you. It's just one more step. Like, nobody needs to climb a mountain, although you will get to the top of the mountain. But nobody is expecting you to do that. It is just that next step, or take another breath, just one more thing. And yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Alison, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If
Thank
people
you.
wanted to find out more about the Neil Jard, because as I said, we didn't really get to go into it, but we did have a small conversation before we went live on air about some of the oils that you can use and some of the oils you do use to help reduce feelings of anxiety. There, I mean, I don't know a lot about aromatherapy, but I've met people who are really into it, and it's super powerful. And I know I did do a workshop once where we made our own aromatherapy stick, and she helped me choose a combination of things that would combat anxiety.
Yeah.
And whether it was placebo effect or, you know, I mean, it could have just been some stick that she'd weed on for all I know, but every time I sniffed it, I felt better.
Yeah.
I really hope she didn't wee on the stick. That would have made me
doubtful.
sad. But, you know, the power of it is strong. So if people wanted to find out more about that side of what you do, or if they just want to connect because they've resonated with anything you've said and they want you to offer them further support, or they just have questions maybe about, you know, a step they can take or something they can do, how could they reach you? Obviously, there is the Facebook group. Alison's, you're already in that, I think, aren't you? So you can tag Alison in the Facebook group, but if they want to reach out directly, how would they do that?
Well, any one of those. I mean, you can put some of those up.
Lovely stuff. So I'm looking at her very spanky business card. So you can reach out on email to alison.gk19@gmail.com. There's also a website, uk.nyrorganic.com/shop/Alison Barclay. Don't panic if that's a load of gobbledygook, because I will put all of that in the podcast notes. And Alison also has a Facebook page and a Twitter account as well, where you can reach her. But it just remains for me to say to Alison, thank you so much for coming over. Thank you so much for being my beautiful friend and for being on my podcast. I'll definitely get you back on. And we want her to write her book, don't we, everybody? Yes, we do. Write your book and get those bloody recipes out to the world, because they are phenomenal.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being
You're welcome.
here.
Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
To everyone listening, thank you so much. I hope you got a lot out of this. As always, if you have any questions, do get in touch. You can reach me on my website at www.lilybadcock.com. You can also go over to the Confidence Academy podcast Facebook group and tag me in there. But in the meantime, have a wonderful week. Be kind to everyone, and I will see you for next week's... I won't even see you. You'll hear me in next week's podcast episode. And remember, confidence is yours as soon as you choose it. Massive love. Bye-bye. And that's us done for another episode. I hope you're now feeling uplifted, inspired and motivated and ready to start making those positive changes starting today. If so, why not head over to the Confidence Academy podcast Facebook group and let us know in there what inspired action you'll be taking as a result of listening to this episode. We will support you and cheer you on every step of the way and help to hold you accountable as you create your epic life. My thanks again to Alison Barclay, and if you have any feedback for the show or suggestions about future topics you'd like us to cover, please follow the link in the podcast notes and get in touch to let us know. We'll be back soon with another new episode and another amazing guest expert, but until then, look after yourself, dream big and live bigger. And remember, confidence is yours as soon as you choose it.